According to the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, 43% of Indonesians can't afford healthy food. And for them to actually get the healthy food that they need to spend about $4.75 per day.
This was always going to be a very ambitious policy when you're basically talking about a social welfare program affecting, I would say, over 150, 200 million people. I mean, that's incredibly ambitious in an island nation of 18,000 separate islands with 280 plus million people.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to On the Fringe. This is Dave. I'm here with Gavin.
Hey, hey, hey.
And I was recently in Indonesia a couple of months ago, and I got to try one of President Prabowo's flagship programs, the MBG program, Makanan Bergizi Gratis. It's a school lunch program that's being rolled out across the country, and we're going to be talking about Indonesian school lunch today. Why are we going to be talking about it, Gavin?
We're talking about it because this is the flagship policy of the Indonesian government, and the issues it's experiencing are an absolute keyhole looky-loo at the problems, the structural issues facing the Republic of Indonesia today. And it's a country of how many people, Dave?
It's like 288 million.
Incredible. Incredible to me, because I thought it was under 200 million. Then I felt like a prize fool when you informed me that, in fact, it's over 280. This is a huge country that's not talked about enough. We know this very well. And it is an important country in the world today. And yes, school lunch is important. So, Dave, tell me about numbers.
All right, I'm going to give you guys some numbers here. Over the last year or so, Indonesia's currency, the rupiah, has hit 18,000 per dollar. It's one of the cheapest countries to visit for Americans, for Europeans, for other countries that have not lost a lot of value in their currency over the last couple of years. The stock market in Jakarta is also one of the worst performing stock markets in the world. It's dropped about 35% this year. And the country is trying to remove corruption. So corruption is endemic to Indonesia. Indonesia has a whole entire government agency, the KPK, which is essentially trying to get rid of corruption within the government. And corruption has seeped into a lot of government officials and a lot of government agencies, and it's also seeped into the MBG, the school lunch program.
So why are we talking about this? This is the flagship domestic policy, and initially, while it was viewed as successful, there have been consistent and continual allegations of mismanagement and corruption throughout the program, including lots of cases of people getting food poisoning and diarrhea from school lunches. The corruption is a major issue, but I think it points to larger systemic problems that often have to do with public policy in Indonesia shooting for the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And this was always going to be a very ambitious policy when you're basically talking about a social welfare program affecting, I would say, over 150, 200 million people. I mean, that's incredibly ambitious in an island nation of 18,000 separate islands with 280 plus million people. So that was always going to be a big ask. Also, when you consider that a lot of the people they were trying to reach with this program are in rural areas. These are people living in villages. These are people who are far away, maybe from the central government, certainly far away from a lot of infrastructure that you would need to bring in some of these meals. Local restaurants. I could tell you some horror stories, man, and this isn't even, out in the jungle or anything. Hygiene is a consistent issue in the restaurant business in that country, and I'm not doing Indonesia down. It just is. In a lot of parts of the country, you have issues with kitchen hygiene. You definitely have issues, and this is not a small problem. Lack of refrigeration, lack of electrical infrastructure in a lot of places. If you are making meals ahead of time and storing them, in what conditions are they being stored? In what conditions are they being transported? These are serious logistical issues, and they maybe weren't addressed to the degree that they needed to be before the plan was put into operation.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and as Gavin was saying, if you go to a local restaurant in Indonesia, generally restaurants or people working at restaurants will make food and it will just sit out, and it will sit out
Hmm.
for a very long time.
Buffet
And
style.
it's buffet style. The food is generally very, very good. It's excellent. It tastes great, but you're always rolling the dice because you have no idea how long that food has been sitting there. You have no idea if a cat's been walking around or a cat's walked on it. And I've seen this happen before at
I've
restaurants.
seen that in many places. I've seen a cat sit in food before.
Yeah.
That was a sight to see. Um,
It,
I mean, it was.
yeah,
If it hadn't happened in front of me, I wouldn't have believed it. And again, we're not doing it down. That you could tell these stories in all kinds of countries, but this is an issue that you're going to experience at some point. And yeah, that could lead to digestive issues later
at
on.
the very least.
Yes.
And
You
on top of that, you have a lot of local kids in Indonesia. I know this from my students as well. A lot of them would come to school in the morning without eating breakfast. And
huge
then
problem.
they would, at lunch, have one piece of fried tofu or a piece of fried tempeh and maybe a little bit of rice. And they're not getting adequate nutrition. And
No.
this is
It's a
one of
huge problem.
Indonesia's biggest problems. So
Mm.
they do have food, but the food generally is not very nutritious. And according to the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, 43% of Indonesians can't afford healthy food. And for them to actually get the healthy food that they need to spend about $4.75 per day. So that is close to, I would say, 80,000 rupiah, which is, I would say, for a lot of people in villages, that's
They're
about
not
all the
making
money
that.
that they're making in a full day of work. They're making about $5 to $6 a day.
And you're talking about someone potentially, you might have one breadwinner for a family with 4 or 5 kids.
Yep.
Yeah, that money's not getting split out. It's a huge problem. I was definitely beginning to see some governmental awareness that was an issue while I was there, but it's a really big malnutrition's a really huge problem in Indonesia, and it's a very widespread problem. It's across the country. Its access to nutritious food is just it's difficult. And again, the diet is a lot of white rice and a lot of instant noodles and a lot of fried things. And
And sugar.
oh, well, that's a different podcast. That's the diabetes podcast we're gonna do. But yeah, which is also a huge problem,
Yeah.
very serious problem. So it's a public health crisis, is what it is. And to be fair, that's where this program comes from. Dave, do you want to talk about MBG?
Yeah. So the MBG program, when President Prabowo was running for office, this was something that he campaigned on, and it was one of his campaign promises that he kept. So on January 6, 2025, they actually started the MBG program in Indonesia. It was very controversial when they started it because people in Indonesia were kind of having the same thoughts as, well, okay, we set this program up. How are we going to run everything from Jakarta? How are we going to have the infrastructure in place? How are we going to keep people from not getting sick? And gradually, as the program has continued over the last year and a half, there have been cases of food poisoning. There have been cases of alleged corruption within the program. You've had kitchens that have been shut down due to funding problems and also failing to meet hygiene standards. But despite all of these things, the government is continuing to push the MBG program forward. Gavin and I were talking about yesterday that Indonesia is very ambitious and they have these big, huge, ambitious programs, but running them across the country is very, very difficult, especially because they're doing everything from Jakarta. And from our experience in Peace Corps, I know from our Peace Corps group, they had sent a group of volunteers to the eastern part of Indonesia, to NTT, as a pilot
Mm,
program. And it looks to me that there was not a lot of, I would say, pilot programming done before the MBA program was started. And
no.
had they done this, it would have probably been easier for this program to roll out and to actually catch some of the bugs that have gotten into this.
And I think I understand the trade-off because I think there was a feeling that because this was a flagship program, because this had been an election showpiece, this was something that you needed to move on immediately, and they did. But because of that, there was no site evaluation, there was no trial program, there was no we're going to try it in this province and see if it works, and we'll get to sort the bugs out because that's a process that could take, I'd say, if you want to do it right, 10 years. And there was a feeling that they didn't have that kind of a time, so they pushed ahead, and they're having problems. Do you want to talk about some of the problems, Dave?
Yeah. So some of the biggest problems here are that they're trying to have more local stakeholders taking control of the actual program.
Mm,
And you have different standards of food hygiene, you have different standards of supply chains. And since you have all of these different standards within local villages and within local provinces, it's very hard for these local standards to meet the national standard. And a lot of this, I think, has to do with culture. And this is not to say anything bad about Indonesian culture, but generally in Indonesian villages, there is a lack of, what's the right word here?
there's a deference to authority.
Well, I would say not only that, but just getting something done immediately,
Yeah.
where we can get it done tomorrow, we can get it done later, and it's going to be good enough. And if you have hot food, and if you have food that's going to be delivered somewhere, that food
Mm.
has to be delivered in time. It has to be kept in a certain way so people don't get sick. And I think a lot of this has to do with the local management in parts of Indonesia. They maybe have the training, but they don't have the discipline to actually stay and keep these standards every single day. Because you slip a little bit and you go, okay, it was fine. You slip a little bit more, okay, it was fine. You slip a little bit more, now it's getting to a
And
point where it's dangerous and people are getting sick.
thousands of people have explosive diarrhea, and you don't want that.
No.
So, Dave, why is this bad timing? And what does this mean for Indonesia as a whole?
Well, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here for a second before I answer
I'll
that,
put it,
Kevin.
I'll put mine on too.
So, Prabowo, as this MBA program is being rolled out, Prabowo is
Hmm.
seeing that, well, Indonesia does have a lack of discipline. I think this comes from his time in the military. And Prabowo is trying to push a stronger military culture within Indonesia. I think
Wow.
it's about building discipline across the whole entire country through the military.
Uh, that's an interesting semantic device, my friend.
Mm.
Um, well, how does this, I guess the question I'm asking is, how does this fit in to the overall lay of the land in that I could see that, first of all, this has been an ongoing issue. This is not the first time anyone's hearing about this. Why do things seem to be coming to something of a head now?
So Prabowo is trying to add more discipline to Indonesia, and he's doing it through his experience in the military, where he sees standards across the board and goes, we need to push these standards across the country, which he's right. A lot of local standards in Indonesia, I would say, are not up to snuff. But pushing these standards and saying, okay, these are the standards, you need to meet them. I think Indonesian villages can't do it in this way. They can't do it immediately. And I'm going to use a quick metaphor here. If you're
Mm.
telling someone you need to go and run a marathon, okay, everybody, we're going to go and we're going to run a marathon. And you take people out on a run, they're not going to be able to complete it. Even if you say we're going to run a mile, they're not going to be able to do it. You've got to start really slow and say, okay, we're going to run over the next week and we're going to start running 200 yards or 300 yards. And we're gradually going to pick up the pace. And then after 2 weeks, we're all going to be running a mile together. And then after that, we're going to be running 2 miles. And then we're going to be running a 5K. And you gradually pick up the pace as you go with the program. Instead of saying, we're going to run a marathon, I'm going to lead you guys, I'm going to get you past the finish line, ayo bersama.
Mm.
I think it's too challenging for Indonesians because they're like, I've never done this before. And it's nothing against the Indonesian people. I just think it's too big of a challenge for them to do this without a scaffolding in place.
Yeah. And I agree. I don't think the scaffolding was put in place. And I think there were a lot of historical examples one could go to in Indonesia where this sort of top-down directive is issued and everyone's supposed to sort of get in line. And the issue is you haven't told them how to get in line. They don't know what a line is. Like sixth graders. Actually, maybe that's unfair to my sixth graders. But if you don't describe how to do something to someone and then you tell them to do it, you're going to have problems. And if you tell them how to do it while they're doing it, you may be able to address those problems, but you will be playing catch up the whole time. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on here.
Yep, I'm with you.
Um,
I think people had this expectation that it was going to work, it was going to be
mhm,
successful, and
mhm.
now they're realizing that, well, it's not as successful as it was, and it's not as successful as it has been touted to be.
And it's
And just,
taking place in a background of this was a project that was launched when I believe things were doing a little bit better economically,
mm-hmm,
and now they're not. And this is also in the wake of the Gen Z protests that we saw last year, that we've talked about on the pod. And now you have a climate in Indonesia that's maybe a little more questioning than it's been in the past. And I think the word that we keep coming back to in one way or another, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, is frustration.
mm-hmm,
There's a lot of frustration. A lot of promises have been made, and people are frustrated. And I think what happens next is definitely up to the central government, but it's also up to the people of Indonesia.
yeah.
And I know there are at least two guys who are waiting to see what happens next, and we're here on the Fringe.
And we're going to be continuing talking about Indonesia. It's a country that we both have a lot of, say, fond memories of, and it's a country that shaped our lives considerably. And we will continue to bring you guys more info about this and other parts of the world and connections where technology and future leaders and events that you need to be aware of. That was the
Future
worst plug.
leaders.
That was the worst plug
That's
I've
not,
ever
no, that's
done in
not
my
the, no,
life.
that's not. Well, you just turned into someone we both know. That's not the worst plug you've ever done in your life. That's not the worst plug I've ever done. Um, but seriously, we appreciate you guys listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, leave a star review if you can, and we will be coming back to you soon here on the Fringe. Dave,
Mm-hmm.
button time.
Uda.
Suda makan.
Sudah makan. Aku
Sudah
sudah
makan.